Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, award-winning author of kick-butt heroines and steamy romance, action-packed fantasy worlds. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to a very well-loved USA Today best-selling author who's known for her Billionaires and sports romance. We are talking to the one and only Elise Faber. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fabulous. And I want to point out yet again how fabulous your hair looks. I'm dying for it.
Thanks so much.
I would love to start from the very start. What got you into writing and how did you find publishing your first book?
I think it's so I started when I was a baby. I have like these books that I wrote in preschool. And I think probably a lot of us started, right? Like I have like a book about a dolphin I wrote, I don't know, which is really cool to go back and see, like even was like a four or 5-year-old I was writing then. And I just remember like my teachers and my parents really fostered that growing up. Like they really encouraged me to write all these stories, and probably because I was one of 3 siblings and we were all very busy and talkative, they're like, put that on paper instead of aloud. But it was like a great way for me to just practice and get those stories down. And then I actually went to school for biology and got my bachelor's of science in biology. And I started doing, like, I was a zookeeper for a bit and I was a dog trainer for a bit. And I was like, I love all of this, but like, it's not like really what I want to do forever. So I took a hard right and dove right into romance writing, because I think I read romance novels like my entire life. And I think that was kind of like a natural, like jumping in point for me.
Yeah. So I want to quickly ask about the zookeeper job because that's a job as a kid I always wanted. So what animals did you work with?
I was a floater a little bit, so I got to work with a lot of cool animals like big cats. So I did lions and tigers, camels, bison, hyenas, warthogs. Yeah, a bunch of fun animals. But it's not really glamorous at all. Like I was in great shape because you shovel and rake all day. But it was really fun to kind of get to know the animals that way. And actually, the zoo that I worked at, which is the Oakland Zoo here in California, they have a lot of rescue animals. So that was really cool because we get animals from the circus, we kind of rehab them and, take them off to other zoos. And so it felt like you were doing something really worthwhile.
So then you started writing romance. How did you find that? Because you were obviously very imaginative from a very young age. But how did you go constructing your first novel and how did you go publishing it?
Yeah, I think that we, like, as writers tend to read a lot, right? So you get like inspired and you're like, oh, I want to do that. I have all these stories, or like, you read something, you're like, oh, this would be a great jumping off point. I love that this character had this conflict and I want to write a story about it, but in my way. And so I think I dove into actually paranormal first because I was a big, like, kind of fantasy reader in high school. And then like my grandma had like the Harlequin romance novels on her nightstand that I kind of dove in and was like, wait, what? This is a thing? And so I really kind of like put those together. And then when like Nalini Singh is like a really big inspiration, obviously Sarah J. Maas is amazing. And I think I kind of dove into that, but I read so much of it that I was like, I really want to do my own thing. And so then I kind of started with the paranormal series. And then when hockey romance was really getting going, I dove into that because I played hockey growing up. And I guess publishing, let's see, I think a standard process, you submit, you query, you kind of like get a lot of rejections. And then I eventually got like picked up by a small press. And I do everything myself now. I'm self-published now myself. But it was kind of a good learning experience to kind of just see how the process works in editing and cover designs and kind of making your brand. So that was like a great starting point for me, but I basically self-publish all on my own now.
So what was that first book and what year was that published?
Oh gosh, I was October 2014, and it was Phoenix Rising. And it's a straight paranormal first book of a trilogy about a girl who, when she touches you, she sees how you're going to die. And sort of her dealing with that. And yeah, so it's really good. It's like close to my heart, right? I'm like, I still like want to dive back into that world whenever I have time, but that has not happened yet.
Yeah. When did you go full-time author?
Oh, let's see, probably just before COVID. I was a stay-at-home mom, kind of working in my spare time. My kids are a little bit older now. And so once I kind of was able to offload PTA and room mom a little bit more and focus on writing, I started doing it, really dove in kind of like 6 months before COVID hit. So
when you go full-time writing, I know a lot of authors often struggle with, how do I construct my day to day? What does that look like for you now?
I think it's challenging. We were talking a little bit before about like when routine changes, trying to find a new one. So now my kids are on break and now it's like, okay, wait, now we got to find a whole new routine, right? I think that's one of my strengths is like my adaptability. I can kind of just like I write, probably about 6 to 8 hours a day, but it's all broken up, right? So it's like, I might get a couple hours in the morning and then the kids go to school or, and then once I started making it full time, my husband was great. Like, so he'll now take the morning drop off routine. So I get a solid like chunk before the kids get out of school. Or got out of school. And so, then the afternoons usually are, if you have kids, it's like all like extracurriculars. You're driving them here, driving them there. They have a club, they have some doctor's appointment or whatever. Right. And so that part, like I count on my evenings not really being able to do much. And so that's where I catch up on edits or covers or, and my kids are older. So they're like, Mom, you're not cool anymore. I'm going to go hang out with my friends. you can be on your computer. That's cool. So I think the benefit of having a little bit older kids means like the pressure's off a bit. I can kind of squeeze it in, but it still has to be disciplined. Like I schedule my writing hours to be like, okay, Elise, you have to be here at your computer and you have to hit this word count today or finish this many pages of your edit. Because without like kind of my self-publishing and working at home means that if I don't have those hard deadlines, I'm not going to make them. So
yeah. It's very easy to be distracted elsewhere. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, I'm a pantser. Yeah. Which is, I've tried to plot, and I feel like I spend all this time plotting, and I don't know about how you write either, but so I will like spend days writing an outline and then I'll go write and then it just veers off. And it's like, I spent all this time plotting and then the characters aren't cooperating and staying where I want them to go. So I just have given in and been like, I'm just going to be a pantser and that's fine.
Yeah. I think after a while you learn to trust the process, your personal process. And I think perhaps sometimes when we go into it, we think there's a cookie cutter process, like it has to be like this, and then you realize that just doesn't work for me. As you said, characters go left field and you think, well, that's the way we're going, we might as well just carry through. I'd love to talk about one of your popular series, which is Blocked from the Gold Hockey series. Where did you get the inspiration for that?
I think it sounds like ridiculous, but like a little bit from me growing up playing hockey. I played with a co-ed a lot, so I was the only girl in the locker room a lot. And I was reading all these hockey romances, and I think I wrote, it might have been 2016, 2015 when I first started writing this. And so that was like way before like hockey romance was a thing. Like there was a few authors doing it. And then I think I read a couple of books about like halftime in hockey. And I was like, wait, no, this isn't right. The details here aren't right. And as someone who plays it, you really want the gameplay details to be correct. And so I was like, I can do that, no problem. But then I was like, how am I going to make it me? And I feel like oftentimes I just really want it to be, like the females can be successful in this way, or we can kind of turn up a trope on its head and do a little bit different. And so the inspiration came a little bit just from those kind of like funny experiences of being in the locker room with the guys and they're like, covering up, like, oh my God. It's like, and so I thought I was like, this would be really an interesting way to kind of like make fun of that whole experience.
Yeah, I love that. And can you tell us a little bit about the book itself as well?
Yeah, so it follows Britt, who is the first female goalie in the NHL, which is, people like ding me on reviews. I know that she's not officially the first female goalie in the NHL, but for the purposes of my fictional world, she is the first female player. And so she kind of goes and is the rookie and falls for the captain of the team. And management think it's great because they want, this like, they're like, oh, this is great press for the team. We'll have a love story. We can sell it. And then there's some twists and turns about her past and do they get together? Don't they? But of course, it's a romance. So they're going to get together eventually in the end. And so, and then it kind of is a jumping point for the rest of the books in the series, which then each of them feature a couple, either a player or a support staff person from the team. And so that's kind of really fun to get to showcase all sides of like a professional sports.
Do you have any advice for anyone who is wanting to write sports romance? Because it's interesting, as you said before, and I know like sports romance is a huge genre. And as you said before, you previously played hockey. So when you read some other books, you wish there were more details in it. So do you have advice for somebody who's wanting to tackle the sports romance genre?
Yeah, I feel like you don't even really have to know anything about it, but you got to make it your job then to research and know, right? So like I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable picking up today and writing a rugby romance because even though I have watched it a few times on TV or have enjoyed, I obviously enjoy the men part, like, they're very attractive and they're, it's a cool sport. It's very physical. I don't know enough about like what a 7 means, or, I'd have to go research that. Right. And I think sometimes we think we can dive in and just kind of fake it. And like at that point, you really have to, jump in. And I still do end up doing a lot of research, even though I still play and I played growing up, because I don't know about contracts, or I don't know about travel, or I don't know about what like the equipment manager necessarily does. Right. And so oftentimes if I'm picking, like just recently wrote a book about a video coach. So I had to dive in and remind myself about what a video coach exactly was, their job that they're doing. How are they important in the game? And so I think for hockey especially, we have some really avid readers who really love the sport. And so if you are trying to fake it, they're going to call you on it. And so I'm sure the same is for rugby romance or football romance, even though I don't tend to read too much in the genre anymore, because I want to make sure that I'm not getting influenced by someone else. So, I think research is your friend and Google is your friend, and to really just take your time and make sure you get a good editor who's experienced with editing sports romances. Because if your editor doesn't know anything about hockey or rugby or football, it's not going to do you any favors if you make a mistake. And we know we make mistakes, right? So
no,
never, right?
Well, then, talking about research, I am a little bit curious as to what like podcasts or resources or books or anything that you would mention to fellow authors that you really gave you aha moments or really assisted you in your career.
Yeah, there's a lot of great author Facebook groups. So that's really where I got predominantly a lot of my information from. TikTok is a great resource now. There's a ton of authors going on there talking about their experiences, and what's been successful for them. I think knowing when to take the advice to heart and knowing when to kind of put it in your toolbox and maybe to revisit later is important, because it's so very personal about who is successful for what. I mean, I think obviously we want to have great books, good covers, good blurbs. So some of the stuff is easy and that you want to do, but someone's going to say like, hey, this marketing plan worked for me. Well, that's not necessarily going to work for you. So looking what other people are doing and then kind of pulling out and using what you think will work for you, and just being willing to kind of change mid-stroke if it's not working, right? We have to kind of be flexible and adaptable as well with this.
One thing to mention as well is success looks different for everyone. So, it just remember and refocus on what your goals are, because you might think that this person is outstandingly successful, but what about them do you think is successful? And perhaps there is stuff that you can take from them. As you said, it's fantastic that now, especially like on TikTok and you've got the Facebook groups, authors are quite transparent, depending what groups you go into, as to how they got to that point, because a lot of us do want to raise each other up and find that success for each other. So I kind of love the Facebook groups for that too. Are there any particular ones that come to mind for you?
It's kind of a little bit died down now, but the Author Support Network, Marie Force did one. 20 books to 50K is always a good one. There's Wide for the Win, because I'm personally a wide author, so I'm in all retailers. So those are kind of important. And I think really to your point of acknowledging that your success is going to look different than someone else's, and setting your own sort of small goals is important. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to go hit, New York Times bestselling author list, right? Like, I'm not going to necessarily get that on day one. Maybe you are going to be one of the lucky ones who kind of explode out of the gate. But for the most part, most of us are kind of sequentially, making new goals sort of as we go each year. And I think for me, it's like, I always am trying to progress. So I got this many prayers on this one. So, okay, now my goal for this one is maybe 100 more or whatever. And so setting those small goals for myself, I think is helpful, because then otherwise we're comparing ourselves and we're feeling like imposters, or we're feeling like we're not good enough. And I think we get enough of that on our own from our own heads that we don't need to be looking at other people and, piling on as well with that.
You mentioned before wide. So this is a discussion I love having, a good old debate, wide or Kindle Unlimited. So have you ever tried Kindle Unlimited?
I have done some, and I think I'm going to put a series in and see how it goes, which is not really the strategy that you should be doing. You really should be kind of all in or not. But I think I kind of have dabbled with a few books here or there, and I think it'd be nice to have a full series, just so the expectation is there. And so I might try and see. I think it's a good opportunity. I personally don't like people telling me what to do. So when they're telling me that I can't publish somewhere else, then it's like, no, you can't tell me what to do, which is silly, because it's a whole market that needs to be explored. And I think being willing to revisit that is, to the point from earlier, is like, oh yeah, well, maybe we should try this again and see how it goes. But I don't think I've ever really given it a full shot with advertising and, really like saying, oh, this full series is only going to be here for however long,
Yeah. What do you do to advertise?
Well, I advertise on Facebook and Amazon. I think those social media kind of outlets there, and then also platforms. I think Facebook for me is like the biggest bang on my return at this point. I think TikTok is a great place where you're not spending any money. If you can get something viral and kind of go, it's been very good. I think for me, my newsletter is really important. You kind of work on building that over time and having good engagement and making sure that you're sending out at regular intervals, even if you don't necessarily think, like, I think for me, when I was like, oh, I don't have a release, they're not going to want to hear from me. I think that was some mistakes early on where it was like, no, you should continue to build this relationship. And I used to have someone do ads for me. I'm kind of delving into doing it myself again, because I think probably the person who knows how to sell your book the best is you, right? And so I'm trying to invest some time into doing that. And we'll see how long it lasts, because, there's only so many hours in the day and we have to offload something. And so I'm back again trying it, and then we'll see kind of how we do.
Absolutely. As you said before, our routines often change, our processes, and I think it's good touching base with these things now and then, also to sort of see what the market is doing right now. But as you said, we often have to delegate things elsewhere because we only have so many hours in the day. You are a USA Today bestselling author, which is an amazing accomplishment. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I would absolutely love to know when you found out you were on the list, and most importantly, how you celebrated.
So I'm so boring because I didn't think that I knew it was selling a lot of copies that week, but I didn't think it was going to make the list. I was like, oh, it's not enough. So, and then my publicist just emailed me and was like, you made it. And I was like, wait, what? And so I think I was just like it's like one of those cases where we're just like ragging on yourself, right? You're like, oh, it's terrible. It's not, well, it's not going to happen. And so I think it was just like a reminder to me almost to be like, oh, wait, okay, pause. It's okay. Like if I had made it or not, that would have been fine. But it was also just like, I think I had been in such a dark place that I was like, it's so sad, I'm not going to make it. That it was like a good reminder to be like, okay, buck up at least a little bit and you got this. And so, I think my hubby got me like a piece of cake from the grocery store or something. And then I worked on the next book, I mean, I think it's important, at least for me. It's like, oh, I hit that goal, but then it's like, okay, now what's the next? And that's just my personality. It's just, I'm kind of boring in that way. I didn't do a bubble bath, didn't do like a big celebration. It was just like, okay, cool, did it, moving on,
Like, that was nice, next goal, let's get it.
Exactly. Which is probably a problem with me, that I can't top and be like, oh, I can't enjoy myself. But I think I'm so goal oriented that I was like, okay, that's checked. Okay, next thing. And so, I guess it's just the way our personality is, or maybe other people have that same experience, but that's how I go. That's how I roll.
And what book was it that got you on the list?
It was Bad Billionaires 1. So it was a compilation. So it wasn't quite like my next goal as to hit on a single book. But it was as a box set.
I was reading up on that book also. So I did one click. So it's on my Kindle now, but it sounds amazing and I can't wait to read that one too. So do you have a preference when writing genre, sports, romance, or billionaire, or you love them equally?
I think I kind of like dabbling in a few different places. I obviously love writing hockey because I grew up playing. I still play. My husband and I met playing hockey. I mean, it's like we're a hockey family. My kids played for a while. So that definitely has a special place in my heart. And it feels very natural. It's like, it's not a stretch, I can jump in and be like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen on the ice, in the locker room, giving each other a hard time in the room, or teasing, or like the good luck charms, or like the way they kind of warm up. All of that is just, that feels normal. But billionaires, obviously, I'm not a billionaire, nor will I probably ever be. So that is fun too, because it's almost a fantasy. But I think once you read it, you'll see that my whole idea for that series was to kind of take a trope and then kind of flip it. So like we have the first book is a Bad Night Stand, and so it's about a hero and a heroine who get together in a bar, they go home, they have a one-night stand, but it's a bad one-night stand. So he gets off, she doesn't, and then he spends the book kind of trying to make it up to her, right? So I thought it'd be fun to be like, oh, this hero who has gives the heroine multiple orgasms and he's great, he touches her, she explodes. I think it'd be fun. I thought it would be fun to be like, no, that's not exactly what happens sometimes. Let's see where we can go from here.
Love that. Yes, I love that. What's one thing that you've found was most surprising for you in the publishing industry?
Oh, I think I assume that everyone else is an expert. And then I think there are people who are experts for sure, but I think a lot of us, and even the experts, are always constantly learning and changing. And I think that for me was like, oh, well, like there's got to be like a plan and a roadmap, and this is exactly how we do it each time. But it's like the industry is changing so quickly all the time, and that you being able to sort of pivot and change your strategy was really surprising to me, and great. I mean, it's fun because you're always guessing, but and changing and trying new things and experimenting. But I just assumed that everyone else had it all figured out. It was just me that felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And so to kind of be able to be part of those groups like we were talking about and seeing that, oh, other people are experimenting too, I think was definitely a surprise and definitely very helpful to sort of be able to bounce ideas off other people.
Yeah. And as you said before, one characteristic that you have is that you're fantastic at adapting. And that is something that's definitely necessary in this industry because things are changing all the time. And once you get a grasp on something, then it means nothing in a year later because you have to learn something new. What are some of the 3 core things that you have to do every time you have a release? What are the 3 must-dos for you?
It's interesting to me because obviously I have ad money that goes to a new release, right? And I have a newsletter that goes out to that. But I feel like by the time it gets to release day, everything has been set up already and done for me. That so I've written the good book, I've gotten through edits, or I've sent it out to ARC readers, right? So I guess that's one thing, right? You want to try to get reviews, my newsletter, and then ads, right? But then pretty much once it's actually out or on release day, I feel like there's not really much to do at that point. It's already then baby storked into the world, where there's not much to do at that point. And I think my kind of release strategy generally is obviously you want to push new releases because you make money on those, but I also want my backlist to work for me. And so I'm also pushing those. So it's kind of always like a seesaw. Like, yes, I'm pushing a new release, but also my backlist, the books that you've already written and put all the hard work into, you want to be able to sell those too, right? And so that's kind of the sustaining income to be able to be a full-time author. So
do you do book funnels? I'm assuming you do.
I do. I have an ARC team. So, and then that is through book funnel. I feel like it sounds so bougie. It's like I have my publicist and I have my virtual assistant. So that was one of those things that we talked about offloading. I offload the entire ARC team to her. She tracks who has reviews, who doesn't. My publicist has a separate sort of team as well. And so, I think it's important to kind of build your own resources that are yours alone. And then also, if I don't work with that publicist at some point in the future, then I might be screwed getting reviews, right? So trying to build both, I think, is important. And so we do those via book funnel. And then I also do book funnel promos every once in a while if one comes up. So we might do like a free giveaway or like join one. But I'm not super great at like looking and searching those out at this point. Sometimes I just don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah. And also time factor is a massive thing. Sometimes we don't have the time to organize it.
Yes.
But, I want to talk about also audiobooks because you have quite a few audiobooks under your name. So how did you find the process? And do you have any advice for fellow authors who might be wanting to soon dabble in audiobooks?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, that is definitely a market that I have some audiobooks, but I definitely would like to put a little more effort into marketing them. I've just kind of put them out there and like, do what you do, and so they're doing fine. So it's usually what happens is when one earns out, then I will do the next one in the series. And so, that depends on how well they sell or how much effort I'm putting into them. I think I'm going to be working on kind of boxing some of them up because I do have some sort of, depending on the book in the series, it may be shorter or longer. And I think audio listeners like longer, for their credit. I mean, obviously they're spending money for a book. You want to give them their credit's worth. And so I think I'm going to sort of chunk up some of those those books into box sets. And I think that'll be helpful with minimal kind of costs because the narrator doesn't have to do much. And I think that's kind of fun, right? I mean, I don't know if you've ever done any audio, but like being able to listen to like kind of find a voice for your character is really fun. You get a bunch of different auditions, you put it out there and you're like, oh, this person doesn't fit, but I really love their voice. But, and so that part of it was kind of fun for me. It was like kind of realizing, and I love audio. So I don't know if you listen to audio as well. So it's fun to kind of have it with your own words.
Yeah. Did you find it very surreal to hear somebody like you're like, oh, that could be their voice, like hearing your words out loud?
It did for sure. And I think part of it too is also like, you're like, oh, that didn't sound good. Let's change that and go back and edit the book because I didn't like the way that came across. Um, so, but yeah, no, it definitely felt like, oh, like I've kind of made it, like, because this is like my words out loud. It seems strange, but so I think that audio is I mean, it's fun and like for the author, and also like a great kind of, I think, avenue for if you can afford to do it. I wouldn't do a royalty share because I don't think we make enough off of the royalty shares to justify it. I would wait until you had the money to put in it into advertising and to advertise it properly. So I wouldn't like feel like you have the pressure to do it. And I haven't tried any of the AI books, and I don't know if you have. There's a few retailers who are offering like an AI kind of, Google Play is one of them, who are, you can make your book and they'll have AI read it. And so I haven't tried it, but I might, and just see how it sounds. And I think that's another experimenting and adaptability thing. It's just giving it a go, right?
Finding the time to give it a go.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. I need someone to write a book on that.
What do you think in your career so far? So you've been doing this for 8 years. What would you say your greatest challenge and your greatest accomplishment has been so far?
I think the challenge, I think, is definitely getting out of my own way sometimes. So like I get so bogged down in like, of like, oh, it's my book sucked, or like as I read it like literally it's a process of every single time I come back after the first draft. I'm like, this is trash, it's garbage. And I'm like, I know this will pass. But initially it was really getting bogged down in those, or like I get a comment from the editor and I'd need like a whole day to recover. Right. So kind of getting out of your own way, getting a thick skin, understanding that like you can't write a book for everyone. You really have to ultimately please yourself first. With that is important. Accomplishments, obviously USA Today was a big thing because that just felt like, oh, I'm legit, like I did this. And I recently sold a large number, I hit a milestone in my own head last September, a very big milestone. So that was great. And so I think that kind of stuff. I mean, I wish I had like some sort of like awesome answer, but I'm like, really getting out of your own way and embracing kind of the goals that you're setting is what works well for me.
Yeah. And I think often what your obstacle is actually quite a common answer in different forms that I hear on here. Is just that sometimes we can be our biggest critic and have our own glass ceiling, and that prevents us sometimes from hitting the next goal until we move aside and just let ourselves flourish. I love that. What has been your most memorable reader interaction moment? Because obviously they make the dream come true. So is there one moment that really stands out for you?
There's a couple. I mean, obviously, any email that I get or any interaction I get on a message on Facebook or wherever on TikTok or someone sharing my book is amazing and awesome, and that like makes my day, right? Because I think writing is so isolating, and you're in your own head so much that like you're like, oh, there's a whole world out here, and that somebody's actually reading my book. Always feels like so cool, even if they hate it. I mean, it still feels like, whoa, someone read my book. But I once was shopping for like a dress and someone was like, oh, what do you do? And I said what I did. And she was like, oh, I just read your book. And so like that to me was like an amazing, like probably never happen again. But I was like, oh, wow.
This is my favorite question to ask. What is the goal? What is the big dream that you're chasing for your career?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess the sort of ultimate goal would be, it'd be nice to hit the New York Times, which it seems unlikely at this point with the base, how they kind of, run their lists. I think I'd like to hit the sort of nearer. I'd like to hit the USA Today with a single title would be great. And I think for me, I always have like numbers in my head as far as like pre-order numbers, income numbers, and how many books I'd like to sell in a day. And so those for me kind of keep me on track, but those are my own personal numbers.
Now, I do have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. So I've lit a candle, I've created ambience, but basically what it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
Oh my God, it's like every day. But I would like the one that sticks out in recent memory is when I was playing hockey recently, and like my body does not do what it used to do when I was a kid. And basically my skates went one way, my body went the other way, and I knocked down like 2 of my own teammates. So, and so like our team, we play for fun, but I mean, the amount of crap that I was given for having been a human bowling ball and taking my own teammates out was pretty spectacular.
I think it's amazing. I just want to add, like, it was only this weekend I did ice skating for the first time and was absolutely terrible at it. So I respect that you can do that as well as actually play a sport. I'm curious, so have you broken any bones doing it?
I've never broken any bones. I got a pretty bad back injury when I was a kid. So I still play now, but not really any contact. And I'm careful with, aside from the bowling ball incident, I'm careful about, contact, because if I do now, like a checked or whatever, I really am feeling it for a few days. So I learned how to skate because my brother broke his leg skiing, and they recommended it for to increase the feeling in his foot, the sensation in his foot. And he kind of stopped, but I was like, this is fun. And so my mom always likes to tell a story, like I had just gotten my braces off, and my grandma went and bought me equipment, the full equipment for hockey, and was like, go do your thing, which is amazing. My grandma, like, right, like it just speaks to her about, like, she's like, boy sport, go jump on the ice. And I haven't stopped. And it's kind of unusual for California, I think, when people think about it. But we actually in the Bay Area here have a really big ice hockey like population and a lot of teams that play. And so there's just a lot of really good opportunities now and when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's cool. And I love that you've been able to just like carry it through like that as your passion, and you still make time for it as well. Because I think a lot of authors do, especially when they first get into it, they kind of cut everything else, every other hobby, because they're purely focused on this, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But then you have to find balance elsewhere. I find we often go stir crazy. So I love that you've continued doing that all the way through. What are the 3 words that would best describe you?
I think we're like circling back to adaptability again, right? I think being like resourceful, so using those Facebook groups, using all those tools at our disposal. And then I think I definitely am a hard worker, probably too much to my detriment. Like this year has been really I've been trying to focus on pulling back and not working evenings, not working weekends, because we talked about with balance, right? I mean, I was so living, breathing this that like I'm still recovering from burnout. Like it's been a struggle this year to hit every single deadline of mine, where normally I'm way ahead. And I think it just spoke to like, I just did not clue in soon enough that I was working too hard and I needed more of that balance and recharge time. And even if it's just watching a stupid show, like some of my guilty pleasures are like, like 90 Day Fiance or like Unexpected on Discovery or all of those like trashy reality shows. Like sometimes for me, it's just like, it's perfect because it's so far away from like sitting down in front of a computer being like, trying to get some witty dialogue or something,
Yeah. It's so true with the burnout too, and quite a few of us have experienced it. And I think one thing we're surprised about is how long it takes to actually bounce back. And so once you really do feel it, you never want to have it again. And I think it's good that you're actively, as difficult as it is, actively trying to take that time to recharge. What is the song that best describes you?
When I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, first of all, like terrible with song titles and names, but like the first one that just popped in mind was like "Help" from the Beatles. Like depending on the day, it's like, like, oh my God, everything's in chaos. There's always a million balls in the air, always a ton of things to do. But I was like, okay, that's like my inner like critic talking there. So I think like, This Is Me. I love The Greatest Showman. I don't know if you've ever watched that musical. When Pink did like a rendition of that. So like to me in my head, I'm like, oh, like that. I like it's such a good power ballad. I'm like, yeah, that's what I strive to be. Maybe even if sometimes I'm like, help, on the other hand.
That you have 2 songs depending on the day.
Depending on how well it's going, how much I'm sleeping. I mean, we'll see how it goes.
What is your life motto?
Oh, I don't know if you can see it, but I have a sticker on my wall or a decal. It's called The Power of Yet. So it's like, I haven't done this yet, or I haven't gotten there yet. It's got a bunch of like kind of sayings on there. And so I think to me, like, that's like what I truly try to focus on, especially when that inner critic's being yappy, is, focusing on like, maybe I'm not exactly where I want to be yet, but I'll get there. And I think there is some power in understanding and accepting, okay, I'm at step 1. I will get to something at some point or reevaluate and make a new yet. And so that for me is my motto there. Yeah. I'm not there yet, but I'll get there.
And I love that that's kind of that motto, the word that I would associate that with is adaptability.
Of course.
What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
So I do play hockey, obviously, and now we've blabbered about it for so long. I think that's probably the most interesting fact. I think that I started off as a scientist and writing scientific papers, so I had to really kind of like pivot to like science. If you ever write a scientific paper, it's like less words, take all of the fluff out. And I think that was like my edits for like the first 5 years of this were like, you need more fluff. And I'm like, but I can't, like, we're supposed to limit the words. So I think that for me, besides hockey, it was like, oh, you need to put more details in. And I think you could probably still see that in my writing a little bit sometimes, is that like, I like the reader to be able to kind of visualize it in their own head and not give them too many details to get them bogged down. And I think that comes just from really, from my poor science teachers being like, less words, you know.
I can 100% relate to that, because I remember being in biology and being the first to hand in my assignment and then getting as a draft and be like, I don't care about the people who live in the trees, Kyle. Like, this isn't a story. Tell me the fundamentals of it. I'll be like, that's boring.
Like, what do you mean just cut and dry, black and white? I don't want that.
I have had so much fun today, Elise. What is coming out for you, and where do we stalk you?
So I'm on, all the socials. So I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called the Fabinator's, which is just like, it was a placeholder name, but somehow it's stuck. And then I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram. So all the usuals. My website's just elisefaber.com. And you can always just like email me. I love responding and hearing from readers, as I blabbed about earlier. So Elise at elisefaber.com. And I think as far as books going, I have a bunch more hockey coming this year. And I have a couple more billionaire books, and one of my favorite series, which is kind of one of my smaller ones, but I just do for me, is called the Life Sucks series. And I'm really excited about that one because it's really tropey. It's like got a guy stumbles upon a kid who he realizes is his and his ex-girlfriend. So I love unexpected romance or an accidental pregnancy. So anyway, so I'm excited to write that. That's what I'm working on next year.
Yeah, that's exciting. So I love that we have all these books coming out, and of course, balance as well. Like, we will be sleeping a lot. Yeah.
We'll be always sleeping at some point.
Yeah, I'm so excited about those releases though, and I love the sounds of more hockey. I can't wait to dive into it. I've had so much fun, and who knows, watch this space. Maybe we'll get you on next year.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I'm going to love you and leave you, but I'll talk to you then.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.